What is architecture?
So architecture is the design of things. You would imagine that architecture is isolated to buildings, but it actually can really be a lot broader. So I don't know, I like to say also that architecture is design, you know. So you can think through architecture, you can think through design processes. So you can use architecture in a kind of much broader sense. It's not confined to buildings or kind of projects. If you look at the biggest architects, you look at Le Corbusier, he would design, he would paint, he would make furniture. So he really had a broad view of what architecture could be. And so I would say the word is that it's really the design of things. He could design cities, he could design a small house. So I think he's a kind of good description of, he has a really good job description of what an architect can be, what architecture can do.
Architecture, what can it do? Is that the question now? Okay.
Yeah,
well, I mean, because you started saying, what can architecture do? So I think architecture can change the way we think about our sort of reality, right? It's a practice of making things real, but through the kind of act of narrative and drawing and sort of imagination. So we produce real things, and we also produce representations of those real things, and we put out new ideas. And these ideas, can change the way we exist in our built environment.
So what is your architectural position?
Well, I think that it's to have many positions. I think that what it would be great is that really to find that the architect can do more than kind of the design of, as I mentioned before, like you can challenge what architecture is, you can also challenge what the architect can do. So the position of the architect can be more broad. So it seems that there's this kind of humanist view of the architect as a constructor, let's say, as a builder, or as just simply as a designer. But I think that in today's world, you can imagine that the way that architects think or design can be ways that can open up new ways of looking at the world. So it's not only about designing the world, but also about kind of how you visualize the world. So I think these questions are a little bit tough in that sense, because first they center architecture as such, and then they branch out architecture into the ideas of design thinking. So I would try to always answer it by kind of expanding or kind of breaking the title.
And I think the position of the architect has broadened so much these days. We're now acting as curators, we're acting as visual artists, we're acting as academics. I think our positions are so broad now, and especially in school, like here at SciArc, we very much embrace collaborations with other disciplines, which allow us to sort of broaden our the way we think through a project, the way we think through design. So it allows us to play many roles.
What is your design method?
Well, I think that the idea of method it's important as a designer. I think that you have to always be embracing ways in which you can expand the methods of design. That you have you have different venues by which you test the ideas. So we have many design methods. We work through drawings. We work through the role of the kind of the exchange between the drawing and the model, as if they are one. They don't, almost as if you don't separate the model and the drawing. We don't see that you would separate digital design from actual design. So meaning that the modes of representation or the methods of design have changed a lot in the last 20 years. But we do embrace that idea of technology, meaning that the main method of design has changed completely thanks to technology. And the way that we look at that is that nowadays we look at, there's not a single method or there's not the future method, but it's really this kind of hybrid exchange where you look at analog methods, digital methods, drawing methods and so on, and you can really cycle them through. And that didn't happen before. I mean, before you just had methods that were in place since the Renaissance, which is drawing and making models. And then you have different, procedures, let's say. But now your toolbox is much larger or more complex. And that should make for a richer architecture rather than a kind of constrained view of what design can do. So I would say that methods for us have to do about really engaging in that kind of exchange from the analog onto the digital.
And I think that comes, for us, comes from the fact that we're of a generation that drew analog, so we did drawings with a pencil and a kind of ink pen and, a Mayline. And we also worked heavily during the turn of, the discourse when technology came in. So, in a sense, our methods have evolved, but they have evolved with technology. And I think it does produce for new discussions on the kind of projects that we produce and the kind of ideas that we put out.
It's literally the kind of the similar. You look at when modernism happened, the beginning of last century. The kind of the conflicts of the turn of the century, of one world, kind of coming to an end, or one view of the world, and then a complete revolution of the world that happens through, kind of later industrial revolution and the evolution of all the kind of discoveries, the technical discovery of the turn of the 20th century. The turn of the 20th, we are in that kind of hinge of the turn of the, or education, or, let's say, span life of the architecture. It was that kind of turn of the century. Where methods of design were heavily challenged from the last years of the 20th century to the first years of the 21st century. It's that. So that shift, it's kind of a little bit conflicting to the design methods that you see I would say, in our generation. So we take that conflict, as a kind of as a productive design, endeavor.